this will be our regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. And our first item of business is approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved, it's presented. Next item is public comments.
I have a public comment.
Okay, did you?
Just one moment. We have approval of the minutes first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I will get right
Okay.
there. Approval of minutes, my eyes got crossed, I'm so sorry. Okay, approval of the minutes, thank you for pointing it out. Anybody see anything else, any issues?
Anybody have any periods or comments they need to change? If not, I'm going to make a motion to accept as presented.
Second. All in favor of accepting the minutes of the previous trustees meeting minutes as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
The minutes were accepted. Now, public comments.
Yes, my name is Stephen Luker. I have
Hold a second. I think our new policy is we'd like you to be at the podium so that everybody can,
Okay.
it's easier for everybody to see you that way, you know, as opposed to somebody being behind somebody.
Okay. My name is Stephen Luker. I live in Decatur. I have two concerns there. I don't seem to see a gender-neutral, single-occupancy bathroom at the library. I don't know. The state law now requires, if you have a single-use occupancy bathroom, you must provide a child changing station, and I don't see any child diaper changing stations in the men's bathroom, and I don't know if that's against state law now or not. Another concern that I have is that Rick Meyer did not discipline Katie Etchison she disclosed some personal information and some medical information about me having a medical incident at the Forsyth Library. I did a Freedom of Information Act request, and it was confirmed that she was not disciplined. Again, I don't know why it wasn't taken out by the Committee on Policy and Personnel. And she had told Mark Gardner some incorrect and false and untrue statements. And I don't know if this came from John Shirley, who works at the library. He also worked at the Forsyth Library, so I don't know if it came from him to Katie, to Mark, then to me. But that's all I have to say.
I just wanted to let you know that if you have a child, there are 2 gender-neutral bathrooms up here with changing tables.
Okay, I didn't know that. I don't have children.
Okay.
Thank you. Now we are on to City Librarian's report.
We have a written communication.
You guys got the one that you guys were included in the one that we did receive. I got some charts to show you, but January is a relatively quiet month around here. On the 29th, the Space Planning Committee met for the first time. So we've got 2 delegates on that committee from this board, Sophia and Donna. We've got 2 delegates from the Foundation Board and a delegate from the Friends of the Library and a delegate from the City of Decatur in John Kinsett, who's the Deputy City Manager.
Who are the foundation?
Tina and Luigi. Tina Zindel McWilliams and Luigi Stewart, and Ann Brunson from the Friends of the Library. pretty excited about the partnership with the Crossing Opioid Recovery Center. We talked for a while about having some traveling collections that went to different agencies or organizations, and they're going to be our first. So we're pretty excited about that. Tabitha Billiard is also talking with some other assisted living facilities. Shelley Whiteside worked very hard to prepare for tax season. She always orders all of our tax forms and that we provide to the public, and she kind of helps get prepared for what you guys saw when you came in. Our long-standing partnership with Millikan University. Matt Wilkerson worked pretty hard getting started on an LSTA grant application for because we budgeted to have no grant for this, but we need quite a few new public access computers, and sunk a lot of time into it to find out that there is no LSTA money available this year. So we will be spending the money. So I'm talking a little bit about the numbers. What I originally sent you on January didn't look too good, but one of the electronic resources was greatly underreported. So I said, that doesn't look right to me. They double checked, and sure enough, it came out quite a bit better. So total number of materials loaned, orange is this year, January this year, and the blue is January last year. So you can see we did see a slight decline, but children's materials went up. So that is promising. And as a percentage, children's materials up about 4%. Overall, we're down right around 1%. And young adult materials continue to be in a free fall. Although I'm hearing new Hunger Games book this year, so maybe that will. It probably seems a little early to have a projection on this, and it is. But I think I've looked at the last 2 years of data. I always tell you guys there's predictable patterns in circulation, and based on those patterns, I'm making my projection from 1 month of data. So what we're looking at is I'm projecting right now a slight decline in overall circulation. Quite a bit less than 1%, although I'm looking at children's is going up about 4.5% altogether. Circulation by material type, this is not going to hold for the year. I can't see how it is, because we saw some weird things. Audio, which has been going way, way down, is actually up a little bit. Well, it's up 3. There were 3 more checkouts than January of last year, but we've been looking at 17, 18% declines. Yeah, and the same with magazines. 432 checkouts this year to 439 last year, and it had been in a free fall too. And usually we don't see DVD decline quite like they did. Other items physical, again, it's just, most of that is due to hotspots and things that we didn't circulate before. Electronic materials continue to be at increase at the fastest rate. And here's the projected change for those materials. We're looking at a fairly large increase in electronic materials and everything else going down slightly. I don't think this will hold. That audio will remain relatively the same. So yeah, about the model I'm using is predicting an actual 8% or a 1% increase in audio materials, and I don't think that will prove to be the case. But I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on January because we've got the annual stuff to look at. But not, it looks terrible at first, but with this electronic media being amended, it wasn't that bad of a month.
program partnership with the African Cultural and Genealogical.
That's the movie Selma, which will be, what's today? It's the 24th, I believe, is the date. And a discussion. And the full numbers for those who are number geeks like me are also included in the packet.
Okay, I think we're ready. Does anybody have any other questions for the library's report? I think I'm giving the Personnel Policy Committee report, so. Relay race. Let's see. So, Personnel Policy and Policies Committee met, and we approved the volunteer policy to recommend it to the full board for their approval.
Can we talk about the equity, diversity, inclusion first?
Okay.
Just real brief, I want to get everybody up to date on that. We did start an equity, diversity, and inclusion committee. That committee has staff, a couple of volunteers. We're hoping to get a member of this board on that committee, and the committee will be chaired by Mr. Edwards. I will not be on that. I'm not going to serve on that committee. I'm going to listen to that committee. That's going to be my role in that. And their first charge will be to look at our recruiting practices. We'll take the diversity piece first, and hopefully we will find some improved ways to get more diverse applicants. And we'll move on from there.
Okay. And I have not, I'm kind of struggling with who to try to get onto that committee with folks leaving due to other commitments. And, I had my hopes up for another person to come on that I thought would be a great fit for that, Stacy Young. Now, whether we get her on, I don't know, it's kind of up in the air.
And we can, I would think that Robert could start his work on that committee prior to, and wait till we get we get the full board seated and everybody's ready, and then get but I do think it's important to have a trustee on, because one of the goals is to increase the diversity of this board.
Right.
So.
And that being said, so I don't, we're kind of in a valley on the board right now, so. I didn't mean to skip over that. I was just going off of my notes, and my notes are out of order. Okay, I apologize. Okay, volunteer policy. We agreed to the revised, we agreed to recommend the revised volunteer policy, which will include a background requirement for a background check for all volunteers, and unless a person can present evidence of having had a background check, which many people have for other activities they're involved in. And my recollection was we decided to go with requiring all volunteers, old and new, to.
I put it as two separate agenda items, because I thought that's where we were going with that. That you guys were definitely in agreement that to add the second paragraph on page 2, which says that as of tomorrow, all volunteers who come on board will agree to undergo a background check prior to beginning their duties.
Right.
What I didn't think was quite settled from the committee, and
Was the older, I was looking over my notes.
Was what we do with
existing
current
volunteers,
volunteers. And I'm being wishy-washy on this one, because I can see both sides, either requiring them or saying they have a pass. And some of these people have been volunteers for 10 years.
I understand. It's just, and here again, when I speak on this, I speak from my experience in the profession, in an organization, you know, and if there's a new policy, it applies to everybody, no matter how long you've been there. If you've been there for 50, 40 years or whatever, policy still applies to you.
Well, it's not unprecedented to do
But these are
something like this,
volunteers.
because in our personnel policy, when we changed, like vacation policy, there's a two-tiered system. We have some folks who have X number of vacation, and other folks who came on, and the policy reads, anyone hired after this date, this is their vacation policy.
Okay.
So it's not unprecedented, at least here.
I'm not on this committee, but can I just ask, why did we feel the need that we have to start doing background checks on volunteers?
Well, it first came up last time when we wrote this 3 years ago, and in conversations with other libraries, I can't find any exceptions to those of this size or bigger that is doing background checks. We do it on every employee.
Is not doing background checks.
Correct.
Every other library does.
Everybody I talk to is doing them. Everybody who comes to work here has to submit to a background check.
Right.
So,
Working with kids.
I'm just curious, though, because when you go to the schools now, you don't, like, I volunteer at Hope, and I don't have a background check, but I present my driver's license to them, and they put it in their database in their computer, and every time I go
You
in,
don't have to have that.
they pull up my photo, and they pull up my driver's license. But
What
they
about
have,
Mount Zion?
Mount Zion, same thing. You put your driver's license in, and so they have my driver's license on their file, and
Yeah.
every time I walk in the building, I say my name, they pull up my driver's license with my photo, and it's just in there. I walk in, they log me in. They log me in and out of the building with my driver's license.
that's just a way of identifying you, right?
Well, also
Yeah.
identifying me, because if something happens, they can say, you know, they can just go to the police and be like, Sophia Spallis, here's your driver's license.
Is your driver's license, I mean, not you, but is a person's driver's license tied to, like, what do they call it, the children's?
No.
No, it's not.
So what good would that do? To me, that would be like a huge liability.
I mean, we had to go through a little training thing and they get
The
a background
Catholic
check.
schools, you know, and all.
I don't know if they do it now, but we did.
Public schools don't.
Um,
I'm not saying you guys should not do that, I just was curious. It wasn't a.
There wasn't something that
I
happened.
actually could care less if somebody does a background check on me, if I'm volunteering here.
There wasn't
I don't
something that
have
happened
to hide.
that kicked this off, if that's,
I just was curious because the thing is, you know, doing a background check costs money, so I
it
just.
does. And, you know, for our staff, the service I used last time we did this, so.
The library's gonna pay for it, isn't it, aren't they?
Yeah. So the library pays for management staff to do a background check, but, we don't for the civil service staff, even though they get one. Yeah. So we're paying, and I use the same person in your HR used, because I called Penny, she told me, and it was $80. Now, I just talked to another librarian last week who said she's paying $30, and she gave me the name of the service she uses, so, that's a huge savings if it's.
Is it federal or state?
It's a reliable, it's both, she said. Yeah.
When someone becomes a volunteer, is it an arrangement for life?
Nope.
So is there a duration on it?
Nope.
So should there be a duration, and every 3 years, someone has to reapply and they go through a whatever check? And that
That's
can be
what
done for
happens.
the people that are already on board. You know, their tenure will end at some point, and if they want to reapply, then they could do, you could do a background check then, but not do it now.
Well, and we did discuss the possibility of doing them more than just once, and I think where we landed was one time. But again, those things could be written into policy, but they could be viewed as just how we implement the policy. Procedure.
How many volunteers do we have approximately?
50, maybe a little more, maybe a few more, about 20 in local history and probably 40 to 50 in children's, and it's mostly in the summer reading program. You know, they're not here all year.
And are we looking for volunteers? Do we?
Yes, we're always looking for volunteers.
Okay, so we're in a situation where we need volunteers. We don't want to drive them off. You know, or attempt to be safe, we don't wanna drive them off, right?
Right, but one of the, I mean, we looked at just, maybe just doing the kids volunteers. But then we thought, well, that's not fair, because
Right.
then, you know,
Yeah, I guess
and
you
then we
must-
talked about
Kid
losing
wanders
volunteers
in.
because of it, but we also don't want to be that place where some kid gets abused, and they say,
Right.
why didn't you do background check?
Exactly.
And all the fallout just with the family and what
Right.
happened to that child, and, you know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
I will say that when I worked at the co-op, when my daughters were in preschool, everybody who worked there, because we were working there, just had to get fingerprinted beforehand. So we just got fingerprinted, which was actually, I mean, I paid for it, I don't think it was like $20.
But again, that's, I mean, isn't that just a means of identifying you? I mean, I don't know.
They didn't look up your record to
Things
see
have
if your
changed a
child
lot,
was.
I would say. in the
I got
past
fingerprinted
5
by,
years.
I got
You know.
fingerprinted by the Decatur Police Department or somebody, it was
How
like
long
an
ago
official
was that?
thing.
So I had to do
This was
both
like
for,
15 years ago.
I had to do both for a job application, some years ago, where I mean, you know, I had to sign a waiver and submit some fingerprint.
So I guess I would ask, what would be the reasons to not do the background check?
The
Chase
volunteer,
people
losing
off and the
volunteers.
cost of money, cost of it.
So
Well, I thought the library was paying for it.
Yeah, I know,
I'm
it
sorry.
costs too much.
But it's.
Yeah, but if it's
relatively
$30, we
minuscule.
looked at that, and we thought that's worth.
Considering-
It'd be about, yeah, it would be a few $1,000s the first time.
But if it's $30, it would be a lot less.
Right.
So that's not really, we have the money to do it. I don't want to let money stand in the way
Right.
of doing something rational.
Will people be offended if they're asked to move backwards?
I'm sure that some will, and some will be happy to, and say, it's about time you guys did that, and most people will just go, okay.
Mhm.
In this day
I
and age, I
think
think
it's-
most
I would
people
just
are gonna
say,
say,
okay.
okay.
Yeah,
Especially if they don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
They don't have anything to hide, they
I
don't
mean,
care.
I get a background check. every-
Now, again, are we talking about current volunteers or future here? When
Definitely
this conversation?
future.
For
But,
sure, absolutely.
Right.
but I kind of agree with Donna. I mean, all of the organizations that I've been a part of, when they work with children in any capacity,
Right.
you know, and I've been a member of this organization since 1989, and it doesn't matter, you gotta do it again.
Right,
After
right,
2, I think it's 2 or 3 years, you have to do it again.
Right.
And we have to pay for it if we wanna do the
Well,
programming.
then
so-
that should be written into here like every 5 years.
Okay.
Because if somebody's
Yeah.
volunteering.
Well, we considered that and decided against it. This committee, or this board can direct that, and we'll happily do it. But the committee, in their,
Well, we wanted to talk to the full board. We
Right.
think there should be a policy, we just didn't know how far
Yes.
it
And
would
so
stand.
this is how that committee recommended it, and so now what we're talking about is, how does the rest of the board feel about it? Should we, I mean, one option is the whole board, this whole trustees board sends it back to the personnel and policy and says, we think you should change this and this.
Right.
I mean, I like Greg's idea about having a duration on it. I mean, it makes sense to me.
A duration for a volunteer application?
No, for doing the background check,
Okay.
every 5 years, every 3 years, or
Okay.
whatever.
Whatever we decide.
So,
And that actually makes it easier, I think, to communicate with
I do too.
the.
Well, and it's all in presentation as well, is if
Right.
you're doing it for safety and
Right.
well-being, I
Right.
think people understand
Yeah.
that.
Right.
so we want to send it back, to committee to sort of wordsmith it and get that
Yes.
language and, okay.
So, well, let's just talk this real quickly, 2, 3, 5 years. So we can, when we bring it back, we don't have to do it again.
5
I
spreadsheets.
saw five.
I say
I think 3.
3, okay, okay.
And current, that is, you're right, an easier way to sell it to the current people.
Right.
And I would opine that it should be done everybody at one time, you know, like now, and sell it.
Yes.
On the basis
Absolutely,
it's risk avoidance.
absolutely.
Right, it's, right.
Right, exactly.
No, it's easier when there are no exceptions.
We don't
you know.
Right.
tell people we're doing it for risk avoidance.
I agree, that's
It's
what I-
a concern,
Okay,
Well,
So-
and other people as well.
right.
we'll take that back to committee
Duration
and
for
I'll
background
present
checks,
it
we
with
use
a,
library pays for
Right,
background
right.
checks. And what did we say about existing? We're gonna do the existing.
Everybody's-
Everybody.
All volunteers, okay. So we'll send that back to committee. Okay, so that,
I think you just emailed that.
yeah, so that eliminates the next item. committee reports.
I did put it in here, there were two, between, prior to the committee meeting. Between the last two PPR committee meetings, there were
Okay.
two more.
Two more? Okay. And I think Rick told the committee last time that we had hit our frequent FOIA.
One particular
Right, one
requester is
individual.
recurrent requester now,
Okay.
51 requests in the last 12 months, and so it's a rolling period.
Right,
So
right.
it's gonna be a while before that changes. And I promised you guys a total on cost by this month, but I still don't have my December attorney fees. I can tell you up through November, and I was very, very strict on what I considered, on how I figured the time and how I figured the cost for this. So it was only FOIA related things. It wasn't about any particular person
Right. that's perfect.
or citizen. It was just about FOIAs. And up through November 30th, the cost to Decatur Public Library was $19,800. That's in legal fees and labor.
To respond to FOIAs.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
But I'll get you, by next month, I'm sure to have the December invoice from Erickson Davis, and I can get you a 2019 total.
Personnel update, the highlight was that Rick said that we've resolved the issues with the hiring practices in conjunction with the city.
And we named, yesterday we named the halftime page. I haven't heard yet whether she has accepted. That we had a registry for the halftime page position. So we had 3 people on the registry, supervisor of that department, Robert. He chose somebody. I let Human Resources know to contact her. And the halftime library assistant job will go public. Is it tomorrow? I think it might be tomorrow. We have no internal applicants. So that's a 1-week posting followed by testing, and everyone who passes the test, and that's a 70 or higher, then gets an interview. Everybody who passes the interview is considered a candidate for it, and then the division head recommends to me one of those passing candidates. And then they all go on a registry, and that registry is good for 2 years.
Okay. Public relations and marketing plan and, let's see.
I'm working on a revision of what Jones and Thomas gave us, well, over a year ago
Right,
now.
right.
And that's going all right, but we're gonna,
I've got a gal that I know that's, she's had her own production company and marketing company, and she also does some work with our church. She's very creative, young, hip, and I guess Samantha knows her. I didn't know she knew her. Her name's Laramie Street. We're gonna meet
Oh,
Samantha.
Laramie.
You know Laramie?
Oh, yes.
Cool.
She's short, yeah. So Rick Laramie and Samantha and I are gonna meet and just, I told her we want to do some outreach, maybe reach, and she said, oh, I'm all about outreach, so I don't know what the cost would be, or if, Rick wants to get to know her and kind of see what her, what
yeah, we'll
she's
talk to
about.
her and see what we.
And then we'll bring it to,
Yeah.
then if they like everything, then we'll bring it to PPR and get some kind of plan of action. She wouldn't be expensive, and she may do some just volunteer stuff. She's pretty sharp. Oh, yeah. Good.
Now, so this is for the publicity side of it, because the other thing we talked about was, we kind of talked about having some responsibilities that would be part of somebody's job description.
Yeah, and that's, we'll,
I guess we'll hammer that out.
yeah, we'll figure that out. I don't know exactly what direction we'll go on that, but, I mean, right now, it's sort of a crowd attack. I mean, we've got several people with their hand in that, and, you know, Melissa and I have been talking for a while about whether or not maybe it should be one person.
Right.
Well, and it also could be something that, not Laramie would be an employee of the library, but maybe she could jump in,
Consult.
focus, and bring them together, then, you know,
Right.
they all have their assignments
Sure,
or whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good approach.
Yeah, a little coaching or whatever it
Right.
takes, yeah.
Accountability for
Team
her, she
leading
could,
or,
yeah.
team leading. Yeah, okay, good idea. Strategic plan, we worked on a strategic plan.
Yeah, I don't think
Oh,
we're.
we reviewed the strategic plan in the committee meeting, and we were working on adding some additional activities, taking some off that were completed. And some of the main focuses were activities to improve services to young adults, of course, that's one of our our focus areas. And, that was the main highlight I had.
Yeah, I'm not ready to quite recommend the
Right,
changes to
still
the full
in
board yet, but.
progress, yeah, still in progress. So, drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, we did talk about the policy in the committee. We reviewed a policy from the Decatur Police Department.
City of
City.
Decatur.
City of
yeah,
Decatur,
yeah.
okay. And talked about it, and we were crossing out parts that obviously didn't apply. Obviously, that policy is kind of aimed at CDL drivers, you know, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it looked pretty good, and, you know, we crossed out stuff about supervisor can administer a breathalyzer, we didn't want to get involved in stuff like that, you know. If you have somebody who you have reason of suspicion, and you have to have reason of suspicion, you send them to be tested, and,
Yeah, and that's the next item. It's actually a pretty well thought out, I thought, the procedure you guys have now, is pretty good. And I think it also handles the legality of marijuana pretty well. Anyway, I've got the revisions pretty much ready to go. I need to make them. I've got some formatting work. They were in a PDF, so I'm not real.
right, so they're not ready for presentation yet.
But the content is ready to go, and we'll have it for the next
Next
meeting.
meeting, okay. Okey-dokey-doke, I think that was it for personnel and policies. Those of us that live in the land of CDL drivers are very familiar with those policies. Deal with them all the time. Okay, Finance and Properties Committee.
I should have wrote Greg on here, I'm sorry.
Well, I was not able to attend, so I'm not able to make the report.
Okay, so there's no report.
Right?
You ran that meeting.
No, I didn't.
You ran that meeting, that's right. That's right.
Okay, Sophia, can you give us a little highlights? Doesn't, you know, have to be like the presidential speech.
Oh, you know, I just left my notes at home, but anyway. For capital needs, not sure what we discussed.
I think Greg mentioned that when it's dark, look at the sign out front, because
Oh,
the
yes,
lighting
I
was.
did
great,
notice
and I
that.
forgot to look
Yes,
at
it's
I was
that.
so
really
excited.
super bright
It
now.
looks really good.
And it looks great. We had some discussion, actually had some discussion about the parking lot and the feedback we've got from it, which has been overwhelmingly positive. Not that we haven't heard anything negative, we have, but.
And then we had a little bit of discussion about what we were talking in the planning meeting about the library and outdoor space possibly
Right.
being used.
But also you mentioned that the timeline on the HVAC repairs, you said that, you know, there's a little
But it's
window
spring, fall.
in the spring, and
Where they can
hopefully it'll
do
get
that.
done this spring.
Yeah.
And then, you presented the check registry, and we discussed the, big items, the database package, that was $23,000. you added a new line item this year, right?
Oh, yeah, the lost or damaged books, that's lost or damaged books that belong to other libraries that our patrons have checked out and lost or damaged. We'd always put those costs on professional services before, which doesn't make much sense, it's just that we didn't have any place else to put it, it was the closest we could get to it. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Want to add that, our revenue line for lost and damaged books was $400 and some for January, so.
Unfortunately, I'll be added to that.
I have many times. My dog was a puppy, he loved to read, with his teeth.
Well,
We,
my
so we,
car accident, I lost it.
oh,
We could probably waive it for something like that, so come in and talk, I mean, that would, I think,
Falls under policy, I believe.
yeah, that's, I mean, it is, I mean, that's.
The
No,
dog ate it.
no, what's the dog?
We've got policy that allows for,
Yeah.
extraordinary circumstances like fires and accidents. So,
we did,
Talk about databases.
we talked about the database package, the 23,000.
The Gale database package is, and I don't have it written down, but there's, 7 or 8 databases on that. There's academic one file, there is a business database, there's a legal and legal forms database, there's a medical and nursing database. It's pretty extensive. So this is a 1-year subscription to 6 or 7 databases. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
And you talked about how you were doing it as a trial year for this year.
Well, it's not really a trial, it's a kind of EBSCO is our new one. So Gale we've had for a while, but we may be, if, honestly, my thinking is if Gale's performance doesn't,
Pick up.
if the usage doesn't pick up, that we will probably be dropping them and going with EBSCO.
And then we, as a committee, did not see anything glaring on here, so we were recommending that,
We recommend it for approval.
for approval
By the whole
by the whole board.
Yes, second. Are you making that motion?
Wait, what is the motion on the
So we
table?
check book.
recommend that the check registry be approved,
Oh, okay.
accepted by the entire
By
board.
the entire board.
So we have made the motion?
Yeah, he said it.
And so we'll take a discussion. Aye.
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 Check register was accepted as presented. Oh, I'm sorry, you're
Oh.
doing
Oh, I see.
Oh, you are.
Deal.
I recognize the vote, okay. I recognize the vote, okay.
And then as far as the budget and the projections, it's the month of January, so there wasn't a lot going on in that.
Yeah, I did a projection, I kind of did the same kind of, I analyzed a couple of years of data, like I did with the circulation numbers, to try to get, to try to improve. It's silly to give a projection in January, so I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into it, but it looks like we're in pretty good shape. So this is not the projection, but so the numbers that may not pan out, right now based on January's numbers, I'm projecting a huge replacement tax revenue, and that may not pan out. And service to office equipment is because I highlighted that one because I still haven't made my final decision on whether to continue with a couple of service agreements. If I do, it'll be substantially higher. I've been playing phone tag the last couple of weeks with Biblioteca, because they want, what I think is an outrageous amount of money for the service agreement for the year, and it has lapsed. And of course, now that they see they're willing to let it lapse, now they're willing to talk about the price. So
Because we talked about in the meeting how we have some extra funds, and that maybe it's better to let some of these super expensive, because wasn't it 11,000 for the service agreement for the year?
well, that's for the automated materials handler,
Yeah.
for the self-checks and
We talked about sort of self-insuring
Right. Rather
since we
than-
already have some money put aside.
And
I don't know
then
how
there's
everybody else
issues with
feels about that.
software, and they kind of hold you hostage for software upgrades and all that.
Well, and that's where I'm okay, that's the weird thing with Biblioteca, is they're saying, in order to get the licensure, I have to get the service agreement for the equipment, which to me is nonsense.
It's,
That's where we can, I'm happy to pay for the licensure and get continued,
Right.
but we haven't, I mean, we got it, what, 2.5 years ago, and we haven't had an upgrade yet. And we've been trying, plus the other thing is, we put in requests months ago to get, to make these kiosks Windows 10 compatible. And, you know, it's supposed to be no cost to us, I believe, but now all we hear, is that you're on a waiting list. I'm paying the service agreement. So,
But you shouldn't be on a waiting list if you're paying for the service. agreement.
so these are where we're, and I'll be in Nashville next week, and I will talk to the sales guy. And a lot of times, if you poke the sales guy, he'll get the service people to
Mhm.
work with you.
Do what they should do.
And again, I mentioned that I learned a magic term from Robert, and that's, what a shame, I really enjoyed saying nice things about you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was about all we talked about, we didn't talk about that much, right?
Yeah,
It was a very short meeting.
Beginning of the year, so we're launching off. Okay, on to foundation.
about $8,000 so far in annual bill. That's
and what was it last year?
14, but there was a $10,000 year.
Okay, so there was 4 of individual things, so this time there were 8 of the individual things, so.
That's good.
I think it's important to celebrate these small wins.
Yes. Well, I did get the donor board updated to reflect new donations too. So. And some people just moved from one category to another, so that's nice too.
We should start some kind of mob thing, or it's in fashion to go and take a picture, you know, do a selfie of yourself in front of the donor board next to your name. Like, anyway. Okay, Friends of the Library. At this point, I totally lost track of my notes. Okay, Friends of the Library met last week, and they approved several requests, 2 for the summer reading program, one for $835, mainly focused on the Illinois Raptors and their part in the summer reading program and the petting zoo. And the other part was for $550. Wasn't quite clear on what that was. But anyway, the funds are all geared towards the summer reading program. Summer reading program, as Rick pointed out to the Friends of the Library, it is now open to non-library card holders. The Friends of the Library, they discussed their issues with having a rolling membership date. Been there, done that, don't do it. And they were continuing to bring in money from the Cripps books, who are selling the books left over from the Labor Day book sale. Second Saturday book sale brought in $1,264 due to bad day due to bad weather. And they had a long discussion on issues with the elderly, having trouble with the layout with the new parking lot and getting access to the book sale room. And we discussed opening the entrance on Main Street for those sale days, which made sense to be easier for the elderly folks to get in and out. Somebody proposed having Milliken students do valet parking, and college students on Saturday morning don't usually.
Well, it's that one Saturday morning a year. There's one Saturday morning a year where there's tax prep and the second Saturday book sale. Even with the old parking lot, you couldn't find a place to
I
park.
was gonna say,
It's one day a year. And
our parking lot situation hasn't changed much since, I mean, I was on that board 2-3 years ago. And
It's just that one sale, it really is.
Well, then maybe they should
The one thing.
reconsider.
So anyway,
Sale.
those are the issues, but chugging along, and so they've finished hiring their treasurer and secretary, and established a travel reimbursement policy, which seemed to me like it was long overdue, which makes federal guidelines to allow people to get reimbursed for gas when they pick up whole houses of books out of town. They discussed having an audit done on their books, and the fact that it was gonna cost $5 grand. Here again, been there, done that. Not a good idea. In general, for most small boards that are not handling very large amounts of money. Books Between Bites had 37 attending, here again down due to bad weather. And the next Books Between Bites is March 4th. Don Chamberlain will review the book Conquered into Liberty, 2 Centuries of Battles Along the Great War Path That Made the American Way of War. That is like the longest book title I've ever seen. By Elliot Cohen, who is a Decatur native. Don't know what the book is about, but it sounds like a guidebook to me, so I don't know. Anyway, it sounds like it will be a very interesting event for all the war buffs. There are a lot of, there's a lot of guys that are really into military history, and I think there's a couple of folks that I know in Decatur that that's their specialty is military history. So, that is all there is to report from the Friends of the Library.
Rick, I just found out that, a St. Teresa graduate, she's written 2 children's books. One that she had
It's on here. Amanda's working with her on this
Oh, good.
report.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
Cool. Oh, okay.
for Paul's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Illinois Heartland Library System report, no report.
No, but our executive council meeting was canceled.
Okay. Okey dokey, let's see, old business, let's see, I don't think we had any old business. New business.
I just want to say one real quick on new business. We may have somebody joining the board. She's going to fill an application, and we should have it by next meeting and everything. The question I have is, whose term is out there? I mean, we're short a board member.
John Phillips,
Well, I know you're
she's
coming out,
going
right?
off.
Well, currently, we're short because Jonathan Downing couldn't take
Right.
his seat.
So she could conceivably step on as soon as she's okayed by the mayor, the city council, whatever.
Yes, one person could step right in. And
Okay,
then,
good.
and then 3 terms are up in June. Donna's, Ngozi's, and
Louise.
Louise's. And people can talk about whatever they want to talk about here.
Anyway,
So,
So Stacy Young, I communicated a little bit with the mayor, and she said she's on, but I don't know anything beyond that.
Stacy Young says she's on. Cool.
That's the last thing I heard about. I don't know if there's any good application been filled out.
there was another name that was suggested to me, and her last name is escaping me. She has a business called Your Money Matters. Nikki.
Oh,
I can't think of her last name. So I'll send her name to you guys, and if you want to recommend her to I don't know her.
I did,
Recommended me by staff
and
member.
I talked to a fellow that I know,
You get the
which would fit into the category of younger folks that are more connected with young adults. And, but he said he was interested, but I don't really know how serious he was. So I don't know.
I still want to say it out.
Of course, big brother, big sister, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Work
She
with
knows
all
that
the
she's
community
me.
people.
Oh, okay,
Or
okay,
games,
okay. That's
you
spelling
know,
out.
games for troops, that kind of
Yes,
stuff. So
it
to me,
is.
that's kind of.
Yeah,
A younger,
So she know, okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know, so I didn't want to say
a
it
staff
out.
member reached out to her, so Nikki Gary, so if somebody wants to, recommend her to the mayor, if somebody knows her, then,
I know her.
yeah.
She'd be great.
another name that, I don't know if you guys know Dave Weber, but I don't have his number, but he was like Citizen of the Year. He's retired from Busey now, I think it was, but he's real super nice guy, well connected. Dave Weber.
You might be good for the foundation.
Or Dave? No. Yeah, either one.
Yeah, there are seats open on the foundation too.
as well,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, because he's connected with the board.
That the foundation was really jump up to my mind. Okay,
So what do we need to do here, just call Julie?
Call or email me, or email her.
Okay.
Do you want the application I can send? I mean, do you have the application? I have the
It's
application.
available on the city's website.
Okay, I just had the gal.
But I think sometimes an email to Julie also makes a difference because
right,
she doesn't know the person.
she's not blindsided, you know.
But
I mean,
they
I
still
guess-
have to, fill it out.
They do, yes.
So I'll,
So then, do we know if she's filled it out?
To my knowledge.
your gal?
Okay. Well,
Would
somebody
Gary-
else got her, I didn't,
Yeah.
you know, I just happen to know her.
Well, if you want the application, I'll send it to you right now. You can,
Yeah, you send it to me, I'll forward it to her, yeah.
okay, there it is.
Okay. And I'm scheduled, I've had 2 terms, so I'm scheduled to go off in July 1st. Okay. Yeah, me staying on for another term was like plan D, you know, it was like, not optimal.
Guys, are you, I've got milliken.edu and mail.milliken.edu.
Milliken.edu.
Okay. I'm not gonna send anything with it, I'm just gonna forward it. There's the application. You should have it.
Okay.
I mean, I was gonna say, as far as new business is concerned, on the, planning committee, we spoke with the architects and had a very interesting, discussion with them yesterday, and they're coming back in March. I have it on.
March 11th, I believe it is.
It's a Wednesday, and, it's just kind of exciting. I think we're all we're gonna get some plans together to present to the board eventually, and, I think everybody in the committee is pretty much on board as to the fact that we want the library to be more colorful and just easier access, just better planned out.
And supporting a young adult area.
That is what everybody says, especially me.
To encourage our growth with that demographic.
We don't want to lose them, that's
We
why
don't
we're
wanna
losing
lose
them
them.
and want to keep
They are
them.
future patrons, and
But it seems like we're doing something, so, moving.
okay. Let's see. Serving our public standards for Illinois Public Libraries, chapter 3.
I just want to hit on a few things here. I say it every year. The State Library has standards for public libraries in Illinois, and sometimes it shows that they're a little out of touch. Officially, we serve 76,122 people. Probably nobody in this room believes that. I'll talk about that in a second. But at that level, we should have, our staffing level should be, for the state library, 63.75 FTE. Okay, we're at 32 and a half. So they're saying we should have 63 3/4 full-time equivalent.
What if you bring in the volunteers, and you FTE the volunteers, what do you have?
I don't know, I don't know the hours, I'd have to double check that. It's still gonna be probably less than 40. But, so, now, if, let's say, I ran the numbers at 70, let's say 73,000. So let's say the census comes back in 73,000, then the FTE recommended level would be 48. By the way, that's minimum. That's what they call beginner. The 63.75 and the 48, what they call the beginner level. The committee for this, that wrote this thing that we look at they're made up of largely of folks from Chicago suburbs. Librarians from Chicago suburbs, and they recommended this to the state library and the state library. So they have a different notion of what resources are for the rest of us. So while I think 63 would be luxurious, I don't think 32 and a half is enough. I also want to hit on a couple other things. They recommend a formula for starting salaries for like master's degree librarians. I looked up that formula, and it would be 60. Starting salary of $61,812, which we're not. It's so unrealistic, and I'll tell you why. Because I compared it to what is actually the national average, and it's 53,000. Okay, because now if you're academic, it's more like 59,000, but for public libraries, it's about 53,000. So again, kind of out of touch. And the only last thing I want to touch on here is that I just want to. It says attendance at local, regional, state, and national conferences is something that they like to see libraries support. So we do that, and you guys chose to increase the budget for continuing education and travel, and we're grateful because now it's not just the director that gets to go to these things, staff get to go, and I think it's kind of important. The Illinois Library Association Conference this year will be in Springfield, so we are going to be carpooling and taking a bunch of people because it's just going to be the registration and the gas. We're not going to have to pay for meals because ILA feeds you lunch, and we don't have to pay for your dinner if you can drive home. And we don't have to pay for rooms. So we're going to get a lot of folks a chance to go to ILA, and I hope that includes a couple of you. It's in October, and the Thursday, I don't know the exact dates, but the Thursday is Trustee Day. So they have a series of programs directed at trustees.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Sure. I should have known to drop
Sure,
it. I
sure.
got to go grab a
She asked for just a quick recess.
Okay.
Go grab a Snicker or something.
Sure.
I was trying to get something.
We will take a brief hiatus. And
So here's my question. I have to go in about 5 minutes, but I can be back.
We've got a quorum, and I
20
don't
minutes.
expect this will take long at all. The annual meeting is typically very short.
yeah,
Okay. Well, if you need me to come back, I can be back
okay.
at 5 to 6.
I didn't realize I could use my phone.
Yeah, we've upgraded.
Yes, see, that's great.
And also other things for you to sign after the board approves that.
Okay.
2/20/2020.
Yeah, right, it's like, it's the magic day.
The rest of it's for me to sign.
Might as well go.
That's fine. Stay for
Oh, that's fine then.
If they shut down many more roads in St. Louis, it's gonna be like really bad. It's like, every time I go to St. Louis, there's more and more roads shut down. They never open them back up, they just close them down.
I lived through the big dig in Boston.
Oh,
That was
really? I
interesting.
bet that was a hoot.
Well, it was, because like, a road would be there, and then like the next day it'd be gone.
Gone.
Like, just
Gone.
gone. And you wouldn't know how to get anywhere. You're like, oh, it's gone.
There's no detour, there's no nothing, it's just like, there you go, it's gone.
And I lived in South Boston, so it's kind of separated.
Yeah.
It's like the big dig separated Boston from South Boston.
There were people, I think there were people that spent their whole career on the big dig, right? They went
Oh,
from
yeah.
being an apprentice to retiring on the big dig.
It's crazy.
What is the big day? Is that what they dug underneath?
Yeah, they're just buried on the roads in Boston.
Out to the airport. It's close to more than the airport, it goes, yeah.
Thank you.
what, I just copied it from last year, and apparently we didn't last year, so
Okay.
I don't think it would hurt to have a motion.
I motion to approve the agenda.
Sorry.
All in favor of approving the agenda for the annual meeting?
Aye.
Did we call the meeting to order?
Yep, I did.
Okay, sorry.
I know, I don't talk very loud.
I missed that. No, I missed it.
I know that before, I don't project in it. That's why I don't actually run field linemen, I run technicians. You don't have to talk very loud. Okay, next on the agenda is public comments. I don't see anybody here to make public comments for the annual meeting. And there's no written comments that technically apply. Okay, so the first item of action is the non-resident card. And I have to.
Yeah, the first page is the formula that we use. There's a few different methods we could use to determine the cost of the non-resident card for this year, but we have always used this general mathematical formula, which is last year's total property tax receipts divided by our official service population. That gets you a dollar amount, and then you take it times the 2.28, which is the average household size, and we get $85.97
What is it?
per
now?
card.
What is it now?
Oh, it's about the same.
About the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. So we just need a motion and a vote to approve that for this coming year.
I make a motion to approve it, I think it sounds reasonable.
Sorry.
And I think we have to take a voice vote.
Doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt.
I just have a question. How many people take advantage of this?
Not many. We sell a few a year, really, less than a handful. Typically, the revenue on that line is under $300.
That's about 3. I got 5.
Okay. We'll proceed with the vote. Aye.
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 Okay.
Now, I have a question, does everyone want to switch the order of this, so I can vote on this quickly before I leave, or do you want to?
Officer.
Do you guys want to switch that?
Certainly do it. Certainly wouldn't hurt
Let's
anything.
do
That
that.
way?
Yes, let's, okay. So, non-resident card has passed. Next item, and we're facilitating some mileage management issues. Election of officers for 2020, 2021. And so Michael and I were the nominating committee, and the slate that we are presenting is Samantha Carroll for president, Michael Sexton for vice president, and Sophia for secretary.
I think you need a motion to present the slate, and then you vote on the slate.
I make a motion to present the slate as presented by the committee.
Second.
And then we do a voice vote, or just they all together?
I don't think I think it's just a.
All in favor of the slate as presented?
Aye.
All opposed? The slate has passed, and you have run a successful campaign. I saw all of your ads on television. And
Thank you, I really tried. I'm sorry I have to leave.
Thank you all for doing this.
Yes.
Thank you.
We appreciate everybody's involvement.
Well, you ran a successful campaign with your pastor partner.
Okay, so let's see, so now we have, annual reports. Annual reports, bless you.
Excuse me, thank you.
We have three. The first is your report to the city. It's essentially a financial report. Finance committee looked at it last week. It's a legal requirement. Our city is our bookkeeper, so they already know all this, but we're going to follow the law and send this report over. It does have some circulation information into it, but basically, it's that last budget report that you guys saw, well, that you guys approved or looked at in January. It's just these numbers put into a different format. All the funds, and then how many things we have, and what, and the usage. We go into much more detail on that stuff in the other reports. But this is, again, this was looked at by the Finance Committee last Wednesday, and they recommended approval.
So are we voting on these individually, Rick, or as a group?
I don't think, well, probably best to do it individually, other one, in case there's a problem with, yeah.
Okay. So first item, we will vote on accepting the fiscal year 2019 annual report as presented. Motion.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the fiscal year 2019 annual report?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the Decatur Public Library 2019 annual report.
So this is the city librarian's report to the Board of Trustees. Let's put it on here. Well, I got the charts on here. Did I put it on before? Doesn't look like it.
Rick, does this align with the strategic plan?
Does what exactly? Does it reflect?
Like the highlights, does it kind of tag along with?
Probably not,
Not
not a crosswalk, there you couldn't have a crosswalk, but yeah, the things that are a function of the strategic plan are things that I definitely want to tout. This is greatly abbreviated from in the past. I tried to make it shorter every year. In the past, it was about 25 pages. I got it down to 20, got down to 18 last year. We're at 13 now. Most of this stuff you guys hear throughout the year. This is just a summation. What you don't see is kind of these numbers that show us that we had a fairly substantial decline in overall circulation in the year. So,
Is that decline a trend though in most libraries that are about this size?
Yes, with some exceptions. So I have talked to some places, and what they seem to have in common are a couple of things. Either the city's kind of booming, or we also sometimes, so when we went fine free and everybody said your circulation is going to go up, we didn't do something that everybody else did. Everybody else did one of two things. Either also had auto renewals or more than one renewal period. We don't have either of those. So, and we'll be having some recommendations to the PPR committee in the coming months about that. But so because renewals are counted as a circulation, but this is the young adult service. Down this is 0. It's down 17%. Adult, children's, total. Now, young adult is only a sliver of the pie. So
But
that's,
if they were tracking more adults, the sliver would be bigger.
yes. Yes. And that's why that huge decline doesn't have such an effect on overall. This is by material type. You'll see that everything except for electronic materials declined a little bit. Well, physical materials, that's because we didn't have much to circulate in the past. Now we've got the hot spots. That's a huge percentage change, but not much in raw numbers. Electronic materials is the only other thing that, so that's our, that little blue sliver there is the physical, other items. The yellow is magazines and periodicals, very small part, and the gray is audio, hard copy audio, so not streaming. And books, you know, they're going away, right, but they're still most of what we do.
And I'm always surprised that, I mean, when you present it like this, you know, use of electronic materials is not all that
It's growing,
big of a piece.
it's
of
growing,
work.
but it's
I
not,
thought it'd be bigger than that.
yes, yeah. It's been hovering around 11% for a while. So these are a little misleading because of scale, but this is electronic content that's not circulating, so databases, things that you don't get for a period of time, you just access it, you got the article, and it's yours.
Okay.
So that was in 2019, it went up, but not, it's really just a few thousand. So the total collection used, that's adding in databases and everything. Again, this is a misleading because of the scale. It's about 16,000. Interlibrary loans, the total, this is total transactions. This is what we received from other libraries, and this is what we sent to other libraries. The blue is 2018, and the orange is 2019. You can see what we got from other libraries stayed roughly the same. Actually, it went up just a hair. Everything else went down. So the blue is what we send to other libraries. The orange is what we receive from other libraries. We're still on the wrong end of that from a cost perspective. New patron registrations. Again, scale is a little misleading. 2694, 2451, a couple of hundred, about 150 fewer. And this is by month. So I always talk to you guys about their predictable cycles. And this is, so we can see when summer reading hits, that's when we spike. Same thing for number of borrowers, so the number of people that are coming through the door. Fairly predictable cycles. So those are the charts, those are the key numbers. I'm happy to answer any questions about this report, and I'm also happy to take any suggestions or recommendations for future annual reports. We've tweaked this a little bit every year, and I'm happy to go in another direction if there's a better way to digest the information, if there's things that you'd like to have more or less attention paid to. Let me know. This is my report to you guys, so it should be what you want to know about.
I've always found, just to further your numbers obsession, I've always found for seasonal things like this, a rolling 12-month that you can graph gives you much more information about the underlying trends than looking at the monthly data. So you've got all the numbers. If you could do it for some of the key things, a rolling 12 months, I think would really
Year to
spot
date,
them.
or a rolling 12.
So I started putting that in the monthly report a few months ago. So I've got the 12-month trend. So I'm looking at the last 12 months compared to the 12 months
Right.
directly prior to that.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that illuminating.
It is. Yeah, and I charted it sometimes, but it is in that tiny number thing that I give you. So.
Well, it's just, anything that's illuminating, I mean, when you look at a bunch of numbers, you're wanting to try to concentrate on the things that are really telling the story.
I didn't touch on it for January because I thought it's so close to the
Right.
calendar year that it's a little confusing.
The one thought I have in all of this is that, we just got through with our big project on the parking lot, and that was brutal. I mean, as in any construction, having a gigantic construction project in your backyard, front yard, whatever, is just brutal, and I think, so I think we really got through that pretty good, considering that you felt like you were climbing Mount Everest to get to the library.
Along those lines, I want to show you something. Pay attention to this. I mean, so we dip during the construction. But when November, when it's over, we start to come back to the previous November. So November and December, we closed the year fairly strong, at least we weren't hemorrhaging, you know. But during the construction, we had some rough go. This was, May was inexplicably bad. Our June was pretty good, and I think that's because we had a big party in the park.
Right, summer reading,
So,
yeah. Summer reading.
I also appreciate on page 5, you change the subject, that you're listing of your other partnerships and collaborations. It's a really nice list of things of other organizations.
I thought it was important, and it's something we heard in the focus groups a few years ago, is that the perception was that we don't partner. That the Decatur Public Library doesn't partner. So,
And we should probably advertise it more, make it highlighted more, you know. Very involved in libraries in the
Oh,
community.
yeah.
What caused such a skew in these two graphs? Because that really isn't much difference to have.
it's just the scale. I mean, if we showed the entire from zero, if I put the numbers here on, so you'll see that it starts at 60,000.
Oh, and it didn't let you change the values?
Yeah, I'm still learning how to do the pivot charts and everything.
Oh,
and,
okay. Okay.
I'm sure there's probably a way.
Gotcha.
To set the scale on the axis, yeah. Okay. So I think, what do we do?
So I typically send this over to the city with the fiscal report. So I think in the past we've always had a motion and again, having to discuss it more. I'm not trying to,
Right.
but
You ready to take action on this?
yep.
Like a motion to recommend, to approve the Decatur Public Library 2019 annual report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this last is this is our Illinois Public Library annual report. It's a state requirement. It's our report to the state library, who then compile the data and report to the IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services, which in the latest proposed budget in Washington was eliminated once again. There's no actually, spoke briefly with Rodney Davis last week. There's nobody in Congress that wants to eliminate IMLS, and I don't think it'll happen. It's the second time it's been proposed in the last 3 years. IMLS is where all the federal funding for public libraries comes from. It's not a lot, but the smaller libraries really depend on it. Smaller rural libraries especially. So it's essentially a restating of most of these statistics and some personnel reporting also. And I will be, with your approval, I will be going back to my desk and getting submit.
Okay.
We have 60 days after the end of the fiscal year to do this.
I move that we approve that report.
Second.
All in favor of approving the IPLAR as presented?
Aye.
So,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. So that takes us to committee and liaison appointments, and actually, I would like to propose that we defer this to the next regular board meeting because we have a new incoming president. So that seemed appropriate, you know, as opposed to me doing something that somebody else didn't think was the best idea, you know, so. Okay. I think that's it.
motion to adjourn the annual meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank everybody for their attendance.